Welcome to Beware of Spoilers. I am Adam. This is my first time speaking today, and you can probably imagine by the sound of my voice, but here we are. So we're talking about Peacemaker. Episode 4 of Peacemaker is now out and ready, and, here it is. Now, unlike Book of Boba Fett, I watched this episode twice. You're probably asking why. It's because I saw it a little early and then couldn't talk about it until it was out. And then I wanted to watch it a second time to make sure my thoughts were clear. I think I teased a little bit last week. Some of the action in this episode is really great. I really love John Cena in this episode. He's really funny, doing his usual, he's doing the usual thing, but also when he's just going through and mowing people down, it's really fun. We get to see Gunn get to play with some of his, roots, his roots working at Trauma and doing, horror, and gore and stuff like that. We get to see it. He gets to really lean into that, and that's, fun. What else was there? Let's see. I also like this, what this show does that a lot of other shows don't, is that action sequence would have been the end of the episode for a lot of other shows. And that's a perfectly fine way to cap off an episode. And it's entertaining, and it's fun to watch, and, all of that good stuff. Totally fine idea. Not problem, but, it's interesting that they don't end off the episode with that. It's kind of like the middle of the episode, where we have some action before it, with some really funny moments, where John Cena is just listing off famous people that could have been framed for the crime instead of his dad. And it's besides that, and then them going and arguing about glam metal, and that's I think one minor complaint I have about this show, and really it goes into a lot of what Gunn does in general. I understand the love of music. I completely understand it. And I do like that Peacemaker has set himself apart from Peter Quill in that they both don't like the same type of music. Where, Peacemaker is very metal-oriented. Where glam metal, hair metal, all that kind of cool stuff. Meanwhile, on the other side, you have, Peter Quill, who's more, classic rock of the 70s, even going back to the 60s in some cases. So that's what his mom liked. And I think that's an interesting kind of thing. It's just, it can get repetitive if your lead in everything is always and here's the music I like, and here's how much... And I realize, coming from me, that's ironic, considering that's kind of what happens in, what's it called? 3 of my books, but it is kind of something where it's this is now, they didn't really have a chance to do it in the Suicide Squad, but here, now that they're doing it here, it's kind of okay, so this is what your thing is, and it kind of, to an extent, replaces character development of the character in a weird way, where it's look, we're not learning anything about the character. We know what kind of music he likes, but we can kind of think of that as his character development, and that's kind of a weird thing. I like that they kind of come into their own as a team in this episode, and they do kind of learn to trust each other, even though they don't really trust each other. The entire thing with the whole thing is very well done. I really like the whole episode. I think that the minor gripe about the music being Christopher Smith's sole thing is minor at best. And I do like whenever they do the thing where they take characters who hadn't really interacted in the past and pair them off and give them time together. And this episode does that very well when they put Harcourt and Vigilante together. Even though they don't really get to interact too much, because that's mostly during a fight. And then putting Adebayo together with Peacemaker is good too, because Adebayo, despite being Amanda Waller's daughter, doesn't get a ton of time to, grow into her own and be her own character and do anything really. She doesn't get too much development, I don't think. And that's also a little bit of a problem. I'm not going to concede that it's not. They need to, that character needs a little bit more room to grow. And I think this is the most dialogue she's had across, all 5 of the episodes so far. Which, is what it is. What else was there with this? This episode felt very, well contained and very well, if this was released on its own, and it was just, here's a mission about this, it feels like this would be a jumping on point for someone who hasn't watched up until this point, but it's only 5 episodes in, so, out of 8, so, it kind of makes sense. I'm still a little hazy about how Judo Master fits into this whole thing. That's, I think, the biggest gripe I have with this show, is that Judo Master's role is not clearly defined. I don't know what he wasn't in this episode, but, in the past, he's kind of just there. I don't think that there's a clear reason as to why he's there. Besides the fact that he's working for the guy who was a butterfly. But at that point, what difference does it make? Because it's that person is dead anyway, and if we really want to get into the semantics of the situation, Judo Master, I don't think Judo Master is a butterfly. He might be. I feel like that'd be a diminishment to a character if he was. Because it's he's got the strength, he's this strong and he's this good. He's kind of the way they described him, they kind of describe him as Taskmaster. It's he's only as good because he's a butterfly. Feels a little weird. And I think if there's one complaint I have about the show, it's the costuming is not great. I think it's a minor gripe. Whenever we see, Peacemaker looks great, but whenever we see Vigilante, I'm not a huge fan of the Vigilante outfit. I also, in fairness, was not a fan of the Vigilante outfit on Arrow. I thought that was too techy, I guess, too much going on. I don't think either of them really works, but I think that there was definitely a better option to be had than that. So I don't know. I feel like there were better options on the table. They just weren't taken for whatever reason. Maybe they want to go with the homemade look, which more power to them, I guess. So look, good for them if that's what they want to do. I'm just not a huge fan of it. Let me see, what else was there? The constant DC references are interesting. There's a reference to what's it called? To Superman having a shit fetish, which is it's one of those things where it's a constant reminder these other characters exist in this world, where it's okay, so why is the Suicide Squad, the team getting, or not the Suicide Squad even, but this one guy is the only one they're sending out to handle this. Why is that a thing, but not, sending out the entire, Justice League, or, I think that's kind of a problem this show has, and that is, if you're going to sit here and reference all these other characters, where are they and why are they not helping? They reference Batman a lot, but, if there's someone who, maybe not the DCEU Batman, who took the better part of a movie to figure out that the White Russian was a boat, not a person. But, there is an interesting question to be had about what can be done in this sphere, where we're not going to use the big DC characters. We're going to reference them a lot, but they could be useful in the situation. Like, I don't have a problem with them referencing Batman and Shazam and then not having Batman there. But it's like, oh, here's the Batarang that I got. It's a real Batarang from Gotham City. And it's like, I don't have a problem with that because, these are a bunch of kids fighting a guy who has, the power of gods. Like, it makes sense to me that they're not going to call in Batman to help. But in a case like this, where they're trying to do that, and this is in continuity, whether we like it or not, with, with the first Suicide Squad movie. So because of that, we do have to kind of, they could bring in Batman because Waller has worked with Bruce Wayne before to give him information on the metahumans, Barry Allen, and was it Aquaman or was it, I don't remember if it was Aquaman she gave information on or Cyborg, but it was definitely the Flash. I know it was definitely the Flash. So what else was there that I wanted to address? This is not Peacemaker related, but it was a thought I had yesterday while listening to a podcast. It's only tangentially related, but, Colin Trevorrow was supposed to direct Star Wars Episode 9, and then, Book of Henry came out, and they panicked, and Lucasfilm, and fired him from Episode 9. There was a similar situation at Warner Brothers, where, they hired Zack Snyder to direct Man of Steel. Before Man of Steel came out, he did Sucker Punch. And I wonder what the world would be like now, or what we would have gotten, if they fired him off Man of Steel and hired a different director for Man of Steel. Where would we be? How would that go? And it'd be interesting to me to see who would have directed Man of Steel if Zack Snyder didn't. And it's one of those things where it's like, we get these situations all the time where we end up with movies that we're like, oh, that's weird. And we end up with two bad movies instead of either of them being good. Bryan Singer, who he was going to direct, what was that movie? He was going to direct X-Men 3. He left X-Men 3 to do Superman Returns, and then we ended up with Brett Ratner doing X-Men 3, and neither of those movies were any good. It would have been interesting to see how that would have turned out if if he had stayed on and directed that movie as originally intended. Would have been interesting. It would have been a little thing to see how that turned out. What else was there? There was one other one of the big ones. I don't remember what it was off the top of my head. And Trevorrow's, Star Wars. It would have been interesting to see what Episode 9 would have looked like in a world where Trevorrow had directed Episode 9. I think that it could have been more interesting. And it would have been certainly a better movie than we got with The Rise of Skywalker. So just something to think about that I had thought about yesterday while I was listening to a podcast that's not mine. To wrap up on Peacemaker, though, the series does continue to get better from here, I can say, having seen episodes 6 and 7. So look forward to that starting next week. What else was there? I don't think there is really anything else. And look, I'm not saying that the show is make or break over to costuming. I feel like it's it's a minor gripe, if there is a gripe to be had, that the costuming is not great in the show. It's for Vigilante, and it's, Vigilante could have been better, but, if that's the only complaint there is to be had, then the show is pretty fucking great. So, good for them over there at DC. What's his name seems to think that there is a good chance that it gets a season 2. James Gunn seems to be thinking there's a season 2 impending, which would be cool. I'm fine with that. And then, it actually is making me more interested in some of the other shows that they've announced, but that are in development, but are not yet, done. I think that this raises the bar for, the Gotham Central show, or the other one. Has Gotham Central even started shooting yet? I don't think so. I don't think it's called Gotham Central either. I just call it Gotham Central. But either way, whether or not it is or it isn't, I don't think it has started shooting yet. Which, not the biggest deal on the planet. If it hasn't. What else is there? I think that's really it. I'm just going to keep saying until the end of the episode if I don't wrap it up. So, tonight, I am anticipating seeing GameStop Rise of the Players, which is the documentary about last year's GameStop stock thing. I was just see Flea on Saturday, but there is a snowstorm impending. And I'm trying not to be, killed in a snowstorm over seeing a movie. So, we're going to do, what's it called? We're going to do that next week. Next week I think is pretty light. Oh no, next week is Jackass Forever and Moonfall and Worst Person in the World. All of that's next week. Jesus Christ, that's a big fucking week. We'll figure it out though. I'm not gonna not see Flea, because Flea has piqued my interest for a long time. If anything, Jackass Forever is gonna fall off. Because that's not exactly something that is, tremendously important to see, and it's more important for me, for my own, coverage and all of that, to cover, lesser-known foreign films and things like that, maybe, raise those up, because, if you think Jackass is funny, you're going to see Jackass Forever. I don't think I need to sit here and be like, well, what are they commenting on the human condition of in Jackass Forever? It's like, I don't know. It feels like not a waste of time to cover it, but it feels like a movie that doesn't exactly need to be covered immediately, in the same way that the other two are. So, this week, definitely going to be seeing, I think, The Worst Person in the World. It depends, because The Worst Person in the World may not be coming out by me. If it's not, then obviously I will not be covering it for, obvious reasons. I think that's it. So we'll wrap up there for today. Well, for this morning, in this Peacemaker discussion. And maybe tonight, we will be seeing GameStop Rise of the Players. If games, and I think that, the title alone is making me hesitant based on the reality of what happened. But we'll discuss that more later. And that will be tonight at, 9 o'clock. Depending on how the snow is today. That's going to be the big determining factor. If no episode goes up, then the snowstorm has come earlier than expected. But I'm monitoring the weather forecast, and that will be the deciding factor here in whether or not I go see that movie tonight. So, So until then, have a great rest of your week.